Hi, I'm Tim Kennelty.
And I'm Jean Thomas.
And welcome to Nature Calls, Conversations from the Hudson Valley. Hey, our guest today is Kristopher Williams. Kristopher's the coordinator of the Capital Region Prism. Kristopher's a returning guest, but maybe we can reacquaint ourselves before we dig in. Chris, New York State has the PRISM system. I've often heard people think it's the prison system we're talking about, but it's PRISM. Can you tell us a little bit about that partnership for Regional Invasive Species Management? How many PRISMs are there and kind of how do they work?
Yeah, thank you very much. I work for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. We're hosted at Cornell Cooperative Extension of Saratoga County, and we have a set of deliverables for the state that have everything and anything to do with invasive species management, from education and outreach to early detection to response and control to restoration actions. There's 8 PRISMs throughout the state. They all came online at different times, but all of the PRISMs are fully funded by the Environmental Protection Fund of New York State. They house like terrestrial coordinators, aquatics coordinators, people like myself, education outreach, and we're here to serve our communities. Our PRISM in particular is basically built on a partnership. We work with a lot of entities, land trusts, conservancies, municipalities, statewide partners to help deliver programs regionally. We cover an area from the Catskills, the northern boundary, all the way up to the Adirondacks in the Capital Region.
So that's a big area. So your team is how big?
We have 5 core members. And then we hire up to 16 seasonal employees to do field work for us, including a boat steward program for preventing the spread of invasive species in the aquatic realm.
There's a lot of invasive species, obviously. It's kind of overwhelming. So I guess these partnerships are really important.
Yes, they are. And they do a lot of great work, and there's a lot of great successes. New York is kind of at the leading edge for this type of conservation-minded practices. And there's a lot of prioritization that goes into the work that we do. Again, our PRISM, we cover 3 million acres.
And how many people again?
We have 5 core members, and then we hire 16 seasonals.
And that averages out to how many
They're
square
very
miles?
busy.
Oh, I've never even attempted to do that. But our impact can be great when we work through our partnership with other related entities to help consult, share best management practices, techniques, to define and describe prioritization, and then learning by doing and implementing programs. We have a lot of programs that we do across our region.
Really a lot about education, right? I mean, education of other groups and kind of spreading the word.
And maybe an army of volunteers if things go well.
It's kind of like there's a front-facing part where in the partnership with all of our other groups that we work with, we train and show them how to do stuff through their volunteer networks, which is really strong. But on the backside, we're working on public lands with our core staff to take care of our state forest, our wildlife management areas, and we're working like with other groups like the Office of Parks and Recreation. We work with the Department of Ag and Markets. We have other statewide members in our partnership that we work with too, like the New York State Hemlock Initiative. So we have all these core funded state programs, and we're kind of like the glue that helps deliver their programming to magnify our impact with our communities.
So you're the core that holds everything together. So if one entity drops out, you're able to step in and reweave it?
If we can. We try to glue people together to have greater impact.
And the PRISMs cover the entire state? There is a PRISM of some sort everywhere in the state?
Basically, yes. New York City kind of has their own little thing with the Department of Environmental Protection. So that would be the only little nook that you're not going to see.
Well, that must be quite the thing, because their water thing is a whole nother thing, too.
Yeah. But they're a statewide partner, and we work with people out of New York City on some of their initiatives to help them deploy programming.
It sounds like it's a huge amount of coordination.
It is. I never knew I would be such a great collaborator.
You're wonderful.
It's fun, though. I like people, so it's really nice to be able to deliver science and conservation. And I think what might help people is we have impact strategically. Our programs are designed strategically over a large area to have an impact. Okay. But if I were to work with, say, the Columbia Land Conservancy or the Mohawk Hudson Land Conservancy, that's an impact at the local level. Yeah. And so there's different strategies, different needs, but those are different ways that you form like a patchwork quilt.
And you pick your battles.
We pick our battles. I'd like to say we prioritize them. We might focus on initiatives that maybe there's some invasive species that are of greater concern that might impact our food supply or our forest. and we tend to focus on them. Insects, pests, forest pests are really difficult. So trying to keep that bottled up before it gets out of control is a priority for us. But on a different level, when we're working with our partners, it's about what their goals and their objectives are. And once they have tools and they have some guiding content and knowledge, they tend to take things and go with it.
And that's really what I think we wanted to talk to you about today, some examples, because in the past you've been here and you've been really helpful in talking about managing invasive plants and managing invasive insects. And we walked away, frankly, a little bit depressed, right?
It's hand-to-hand combat.
It's so overwhelming, and it just gets to the point where I know in my own backyard it gets overwhelming. And so we wanted to talk about some success stories, some positive things.
It's interesting. I'm not a behavioral psychologist.
Oh, we thought you were that too.
All right, I'm leaving.
I've learned, and we have been provided tools through the state about behavioral management and the way people think and perceive. I'd like to say that I think when people have that, self-actualization, and they become aware of something that may not be right in their environment, I'm talking also their social and cultural domain, right? Invasive species is one of those. It's like they all of a sudden woke up one day and they realized that, oh, this green plant outside is not native and it's not normal and it's doing things that I don't like. And then people might attend a workshop or a program and they learn about the biology of invasive plants, and then it becomes very impactful in their terms of like this progression of, oh, they're everywhere, I don't know what to do. And I think that's the initial realization that this is problematic. But for myself as a program manager, I'm way beyond that part of the learning curve and actualization. I'm at the point where I see a lot of great works that are done and the impact that we have, and the impact, more importantly, what other people do, what other entities, not-for-profits, groups, and volunteers do is really amazing at the local level. What you can take care of in your backyard is really impressive. And the changes that people make have long-lasting impacts. And that's another important thing that we do see. So it's important to celebrate, okay, why are we doing this and what is the outcome? Why not acknowledge that?
It's really hopeful to hear you say that, because I think maybe 10 years ago, people who I talked to didn't even realize they're invasive species. And I made them very depressed when I talk about the things that are greening in the spring are probably invasive. So someone would be riding on Metro North and say to me, I'm completely depressed because all I see are invasive species. But if people are really starting to wake up, that's good news. I mean, I see that a little bit, but you must see it a lot.
Yeah, I got two comments to that. We have a New York State Invasive Species Expo every 2 years. The first expo that we did, a question was brought up, and there was 500 people in this audience, and the question was, raise your hand. These are working professionals from across the state in conservation, statewide partners, DEC, Fish and Wildlife, you name it, Nature Conservancies, things like that. And the question was, raise your hand if you had received any collegiate level education regarding invasive species. Guess how many people raised their hand? 3 people. And they were young people, which
And
was
how
great.
long ago was this?
6 years ago.
Huh, okay.
Yeah. Ecology is kind of a modern science. Most of you are botanists. Really, you are the work that you do with pollinators, you're botanist. This is like more of a newer science. But in terms of invasive species, it's even newer. Biological fouling of our environment that's happening at a very increased rate due to climate impacts, and then also the nature of our behavior, human behavior. We're the root cause.
Everybody I know has a favorite invasive. It's their favorite to hate. Now, is that a level of sophistication we're striving for?
It's funny. I'm going to counter with that. I have some invasives that I really like.
Tell us.
Well, you have to admire them because they're incredibly
yeah.
tenacious, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's really neat. First off, they are plants. They are animals. They are insects.
Right.
They are living organisms. They're part of that biotic world. They're just in the wrong place. They're not in their original habitat.
And it's usually because of us, right, that they're in the wrong place.
Nursery trade, buying and purchasing of ornamental plants that we tend to buy showy plants that are drought tolerant and they produce a lot of fruit, they flower early, and they're from lower latitudes. And with climate change and warming temperatures, these plants are waking up, and we call them sleeper species, and they're behaving invasively.
And you see more and more of those each year, right? Because there are new introductions in the nursery trade, and some of these we don't even know that they're invasive when we're first.
It's interesting. Bethany Bradley out of University of Amherst in Massachusetts did a study a couple years ago. 61% of all known invasives are currently sold in the United States.
Yeah.
We know what the plants are. They're still sold. Some states have zero regulations, where other states have some regulations, and New York is doing a very good job at that. We still have the power to purchase indiscriminately on the internet without really knowing what we're doing.
And it's pretty complex, right? I mean, it's because nursery trade, it's a business that you have to have plants for a certain period of time, right? So it's like you can't just get rid of them tomorrow if they're invasive.
No, right? You have like stock that might take 10 years
Right.
before they can bring it to product to actual commercial sale.
It doesn't mean I'm not going to go to the Lowe's manager and tell them they shouldn't be selling privet, which I do all the time, things like that. But it does still happen a lot, right?
Yeah. There are regulations. The Department of Ag and Markets in New York sends out inspectors, horticultural inspectors. I think there's over 10,000 growers and producers in New York. They survey about half of them every year, and they do find common violations, but they're rather small. In terms of sale, ornamentals, like there are some plants that are fantastic, and there's no reason not to purchase them.
Right.
But I think when people are homeowners and they're purchasing products, they should do a little research and just maybe Google, like, what are some of the properties of this plant? Are they invasive? There's a lot of literature and references out there for people to know. There's so many books and so many resources.
Well, even reading catalog, they're marked where they don't ship to, and that gives you a little bit of a clue. So if you read a catalog carefully when you're browsing, that can be useful.
Well, some of us do and some of us don't, right? Some of
I
us are
read
obsessed
small
with catalogs,
print.
right?
I'm going to take the opportunity. One of the points that I find for behavioral management or changing people's minds is when you explain a little bit of the science to them. And you probably have heard me talk about my gardens, and like I have those ornamental lilies from Norway. When I look at them, there's no insects on them. There's no bees, there's no
Right.
mimics, there's no moths, there's no butterflies. They're not productive. They have a nice color, they're great. But then I look at other ecotypes, native species, and I can see all the interaction. I can just look and see the arthropods and the insects and the pollinators using them. And I know that that is providing ecosystem function. And so if people can make those connections and also realize when you plant natives in mass, like a monoculture, they're just as beautiful and they actually do very well. And some of them are very deer resistant.
Well, and to your point, I think it's incumbent upon people when they're buying plants to think, at least where does it come from? And it's very easy to find that out.
The other thing is when you watch plants, we have honeysuckle everywhere. It's, I don't know, what is this, April?
It's one of my favorites.
It's the only thing you can
Unfavorites.
see right now growing in the
Yeah.
forest.
That and the mean roses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mean roses.
If they're growing when the other plants are,
Yeah.
you can probably assume that they're behaving invasively.
Or growing really quickly, right? That's the
Yeah.
other thing. If you see a tree growing really, really quickly, it's probably not from here.
Yeah.
So we probably should talk about some positive things. I'm getting depressed again.
Oh,
right?
okay. I want to talk about the Grassland Bird Trust. I
Yeah.
hear that's a big fat success story.
All right. Thank you very much. Let's get to the fun stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a little background story before I dive into this. So we're going to talk at the local level, right? You can already tell I'm excited. I'm an avid bike rider, and I tend to ride all sorts of places. And about 20 years ago, I was in Washington County, and I was just going for a bike ride, and I was on the back agricultural farm roads, really bucolic. You can see Vermont not far away. And I'm on my bike, and all of a sudden I'm looking out, and I'm going up a hill, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of dogging it a little bit. I'm just like looking at the farmland and the grasslands, and all of a sudden, this is like in April, I see the snowy owl. Oh, I know what that is. I didn't know they were here. And so I stop. I get off my bike and I'm drinking some water and I'm just watching this thing. I'm like, this is fantastic. And that lasted about 5 minutes, right? And then I get on my bike and I start pedaling up this hill, and really funny situation. I drove up on like a horde of like 30 or 40 cars. They're all parked along the side of the road. They got these camouflage tents out. They've got these spotting scope. I have no idea what they're doing. Right? And then it dawns on me, they're birders, right? And I'm like, oh, these people are pretty intense. The funny part is that they're looking everywhere except for right down the hill where the owl was.
You probably scared the owl away.
Yeah, I kind of just pointed and just kept riding my bike.
He's
and I just
making
giggled.
little owl laughter.
Yeah, exactly.
But the point of that introduction is the property that I was riding by was part of the Bird Grassland Trust. It's a non-for-profit, and it hadn't been formed then. But let's just fast forward 20-some years later when I'm doing invasive species work. This nonprofit has a board, like a lot of other organizations. They have mostly all volunteer work at this moment. They did recently hire a conservation coordinator for their lands. But these gentlemen that found out about the PRISM through word of mouth, probably at some other project we were doing, they said, why don't you go visit the Capital Region Prism, talk to Chris, and find out what they could do. These volunteers came in, Ron Ranoni, there's Keith Swanson, Mark Jenke. These guys like, can we just meet? We just want to come in. Like, well, how much time do you want? And like, let's block out an hour. And they went through this discussion about like how they realized they had all these magnificent birds, and they had this nonprofit, and they're doing all these things. And at some point, somebody in that nonprofit realized there were invasive species on the property, and they became engaged and aware of conservation. They knew that they had a problematic species. In this case, it was a knapweed, okay, which is a common grassland invader, especially in agricultural settings. And they wanted to know more and just have a conversation about how are these plants problematic, because they realized that there was some type of connection that it was degrading the land, which was affecting possibly their bird counts. They have over 10 rare, threatened, and endangered species on their property. It also is a property that borders the Washington County grasslands, which is a DEC bird wildlife area.
And how big is it? Is it really large?
The Washington County grasslands is huge. It's several...
Because they kind of have to be, right, to attract all those
20,000 acres.
birds. Yeah, wow.
Bird Grassland Trust, they have properties that are satellite properties outside of that area.
Okay, all connected?
Yeah, so ecological connectivity, and they're doing all these
great.
great things. So the long story short is we started with sharing a management plan, giving them consultation on the different types of invasive plants. But we brought in experts. We brought in Linda White from the National Park Service. We brought in another individual from Cornell through their bird program. And we were bringing people to the site and connecting them with our resource network to give them advice on how to crack the code to get rid of these problematic species. But it wasn't just like, oh, let's just get rid of everything. It's like, let's find out what's really going on here and let's prioritize. Let's find out what one of the biggest threats are. In year one, that's kind of, there were several meetings that we had, maybe 3 or 4 meetings, 3 or 4 hours. We did site visits. We reached out to experts. We brought them in. And then we came up with a loose plan. Restore the grasslands where the birds are nesting, their habitat. Let's provide a better environment. This knapweed, it was just growing so thick and so tall. It just got the right vertical height and structure that we thought maybe it was interfering with the birds and their ability to nest properly or access their nests. One of the recommendations was to use a selective herbicide that only affects plants in the thistle family. We had a chemical application applied to the grasslands as a research study pilot. I think we treated like 10 acres. It was rather tricky because you can't do these things when the birds are nesting and rearing. And then there's a short time window where they have to do rotational mowing for the habitat. And then like trying to find where we could fit that in, all the while being surrounded by wetlands.
You love that.
Oh, it's great. So there were people at the state level involved and giving prescriptions. So it took really a village. The real people are the Grassland Trust volunteers.
Right.
They didn't have the toolkit, but they knew enough where to go and find it.
Well, and not even the prioritization skills, right? I mean, because you
No.
prioritize within this project, too. It's not like, let's just get rid of everything.
The program has progressed in different ways. So we call it adaptive management. So I'll go through the timeline a little bit. We talk a little bit about vector management too. They've got a couple parking lots. They got a couple boardwalks for viewing. It's a retired farm.
What a vector is, find that.
Train tracks.
So it's anything that can bring in
Trails.
those seeds and things like that.
bike
right?
Man-made
paths.
intrusions.
Yeah. So they had some of those classic retired agricultural field, buckthorn and honeysuckle. And a lot of it was growing along old barbed wire fences. So those were secondary targets, not really important.
Right.
But we took care of this main monoculture of this knapweed. It was 98% reduction
Wow.
with one treatment, which will probably last 5 or 6 years.
So something native pops right up really quick.
Oh, that's what we talked about, yeah. The native stuff is still there.
Yeah.
Because it was so specific, the herbicide, right?
Yeah.
So now it's got room.
Yeah. So the native seeds, hadn't germinated. They were just under that dense cover, just waiting for an opportunity to come back.
Because there's usually like a seed bank, right, of
Yes.
natives that are kind of, you don't see them, right? When you
Or
have
they're in
invasives.
smaller populations in the
Right.
right opportunity. So part of the agricultural land is it's highly degraded from overgrazing and overfarming. So there's also another layer to this project where we're trying to amend the soils, right? And it's still a little trial and error. And we're still trying to get the desired grasses to fill in. The quality of the property has improved greatly just after 1 year, one treatment. But the grassland guys want more.
I was going to say, how did you convey all this information even to them in the
The meeting, we just sat
Yeah.
down. They like, here's our property. Like, okay, what's on your property? Okay, what is your property? What are the soils? I looked this stuff up. I go to the Web Soil Survey. I went through some of the Natural Heritage Program documentations on grassland habitats. They have listings that are publicly accessible, and you can look and like, oh, these are the types of plants that should be growing in this area. So fast forwarding, like year 2, they became more involved with, let's get rid of some of these less aggressive invasive species that might be on the perimeter of the property. They've been working with their neighbors, private landowners, who have been doing work, which is amazing. They have a message to help us out. These plants are encroaching on our property. Could you help us? We have best management practices. So they're taking information to their local residents in their immediate area. But things like managing these fence lines and these roads for any encroaching. So now they're suppressing invasive species that might threaten the future of that partially restored grassland habitat. So they've gone another step. They're moving on this continuum of this response. But they're also learning, okay, this didn't work, what can we do?
Sit down and figure it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's try another approach.
And do you have like experts kind of emerging from this? I mean, experts within the group now?
Oh, they're great.
Yeah.
So the Grassland Bird Trust people that we're working with, they come to our annual partner meeting. And the other people that have similar properties, we provide networking opportunity after our meeting. It's just like 2 hours where they're just sharing of
Very cool.
information.
I mean, I
yes,
guess
yeah.
I'm jumping ahead too. It's like, I guess this is, you could replicate this too, right? I mean, since this is almost like a model in terms of getting people involved and slowly and educating them and then having success.
Yeah, I think it's really great. It's word of mouth. There's professional levels of consultation and training occurring there. And it's just a small portion of what some of the PRISM leaders do in New York. I want to share even more. 3rd year at the Grasslands, we had a conversation. Well, you have these attributes and these indicators on your property. These are conservation terms. An indicator of a functioning ecosystem is, do you still have the short-eared owl, the snowy owl? Are the harriers there? Are the populations increasing? Those are indicators that your conservation practices, if you're applying them, are doing well. So I said, let's start looking at your bird counts and let's start monitoring them to see if there's been any changes, because you want to see an increase. But then it came to the next part, which is the attributes. What are the attributes, the biotic and abiotic characteristics of the landscape that support those special creatures, those birds? Are they present? Are those attributes to support those birds present? So the conversation for management has now also shifted into restoration. And what they decided to do is they contacted Botany Visible with Steve Young, who's retired from the Natural Heritage Program, and they decided to create what are called founders plots. So the concept is these birds, when they're rearing their young, they need insects to feed them. Are there enough plants to feed the pollinators so the birds can capture the butterflies and the moths and the other insects to feed their young? And so they're like, aha, this is another part of this conservation model for restoring. And so they set up these founders plots. I forget, I don't know if there's 5 or 8 of them, but they're small strips of about maybe 15 feet wide by about 40 feet long, and they're native plants in mass that have been planted. And they do have some crude deer fencing around them. So they're still kind of figuring out what's the best type of fencing to keep the deer
Plants
out.
or seeds? I mean, to have them.
They're using the founders plots for a seed source.
Okay.
So they will collect the seeds and then distribute on their property to help cultivate the desired plant species to feed those insects that help support those birds.
And did the founders' plots, did someone take, was one person responsible for each plot? I mean, is that the way you organized it?
I like this. It's a good question. So sometimes like with not...
See, I ask good questions.
Yes, you do. I wrote it down.
Oh, there's so much. We don't have enough time. So if we get this phone call from Ron Renaudy, say, hey, Chris, your seasonal technicians, your staff, you guys be available in June? We have our native plant plugs coming in. And right, it's like 3-day notice, right? You know, we're busy as all get out. And there's, all right, we'll shift our program, will come out. So it's been this team effort with some of their staff and then some of their actual volunteers and then our staff. And we've met to help install, to help cultivate, to help plant, and then help make sure that these things are working. So it's a team effort. And it's just taking and pulling resources from the community, from their staff, from our staff, and anybody else. We've had a couple work days to get those founder plots established and monitored.
Do you have roles of people who are stewards who are responsible for certain things? I mean, it's great that you have the birders because obviously they're the people who are looking at the indicator species.
When we tend to engage with a partner, we look for a few things. We want to make sure that there are things in place that are going to lead to success. And typically, if there's a board established with an organization, then there's an entity that we can communicate with that has like a historical perspective of interacting with their volunteers or with any paid staff. So there's like an established system. And then we'll look at, okay, are there dedicated volunteers? And we'll say, oh yeah, Tim is great. He is knee deep, elbow deep. He's in it. He's really motivated. And it shows when we talk to our partners. And we kind of do this general gauging. Do they have the capacity? Do they have the willpower and the time to actually make a difference? And we're really measured. We don't want to give too much at once, but what can our partner that we work with, what can they do? And we work within those constraints.
And the structure is really like a board or committee and then also stewards, individual stewards, right?
If there's a conservation steward, it's a real win-win.
Okay, I'm officially overwhelmed. I'm the little guy in the corner that wants to restore my neighbor's farm that they just gave up and want to donate and stuff. And you're telling us all about all these boards because you're at the successful level where you have this structure. So I'm the little guy that wants to find out about this. We make an appointment with Chris, and you come and spend an hour with you?
There's a couple different layers. That's overwhelming for our office.
Yeah.
So when we work with people that might have critical habitat or they've identified like community forest or significant parcels and they're under easements, that gets a different level of attention from the PRISM because they have resources available.
Because they have to prioritize.
So who do they go
too.
to?
We do trainings. We do public trainings. We do integrated pest management trainings for the homeowner. And we provide, here is what you can do in your backyard. And we give real world applications in terms of tools that any individual can do on those small scales.
And how does someone find out about this? Do you have announcements or?
We do announcements on our website. We have a distribution list too, which we prefer. We do have a listserv. It's not like the bombardment of like, hey, how is your car service today?
Yeah.
Did you like our quality? It's probably quarterly. We release maybe 3 invites for high priority kind of education outreach and other things that are going on.
So if I wanted to get on the list, I would.
You just contact the PRISM and say, hey, could you add me?
You were talking about year 3. Now you're going to go back and measure how many new critters and what the population has risen. What was the result?
With the Bird Grassland Trust, we're now into that point like, okay, are all of these different management approaches we're taking, we've moved from removing invasive to now restoring, and that was just year 1 last year with restoring. So now it's, okay, how can we adapt to make this work? Are we using the right plants? And how do we start measuring? And what we ask the Bird Trust to do, okay, your indicator is your bird populations, and that's to start looking at your bird counts and monitoring, looking at historically what was there in the past and what's going to be there in the future. So that takes a little time. And then on the restoration scale is we have them throw quadrants down. Where
It's
they
like how you measure success,
Yeah.
right, basically.
Yeah, we'll
you
actually
have to
do
measure
like
something. Yeah.
yeah, we measure. So
Oh.
it's with a quadrant, you throw it down, right? It could be a 10 foot by 10 foot, if that makes it a little more easier to digest. It's okay, you look at the grass and all the other species in that area, and you actually do a count, like a percent abundance. And if it's 95% knapweed, this invasive, then you know it's not working. But if you did the treatment and then you go back a year later and you throw this quadrant down for a post-treatment evaluation and you see it's like 50%, okay, 50% is knapweed, now we have 50% is native grasses, we still have work to do, right? And you determine those thresholds. They got lucky and this process reduced it by 98%. So now it's like, just keep monitoring. And if you see the knapweed coming back, then you know you have to talk about doing another treatment down the road. But in the meantime, they've provided 5 to 7 years for habitat restoration. Now it's just maintaining their grasslands.
And monitoring the population of the birds.
Yes.
It's getting to be time to wrap up the conversation because we just have about a year's worth of talking to do here. I'm going to jump in and ask the Tim question. And then what we're going to do is sit down with Chris again and finish the conversation and have a second episode. Tim, ask your question.
My question is always, with all the craziness in the world and also the fact that you're seeing invasives every day, what gives you hope or joy? Someone asked me. You should ask also about joy, hope or joy during your day.
I focus on joy. It's not just the conservation and the restoring and the ecology land, but it's also watching other people, humans, doing great work and taking pride in their work. And there are a lot of ecosystems and habitats on large and small scales in New York that are in perfectly great shape. So I still very much enjoy our natural world. And then I'm just looking at other habitat that, hey, this would be a good project. Let's do this. And I find it highly rewarding. And I'm even here today sharing this message. I find it a rewarding experience.
Well, we find it rewarding to talk to you and hear about this. I mean, it's just total joy and hope when we talk to you because these success stories are just phenomenal. Not just the fact that you're being successful in restoring land, but the people are involved and really interested and engaged. I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you.